Hi everyone. Today we'll be expanding on our existing Angular portfolio series where we were developing expense tracker, and today we'll be talking about expense effects and local storage. Prior to that, what we have discussed signals, and then we have looked at the reactive forms. Then we have looked at the lazy loading, and later we worked on the HTTP client, and along with that, a JSON server for local development. So if you want to watch those videos, the links are going to show up here on top, and you can search the playlist as well to see all these videos, and using that you can build your own expense tracker while learning all the features that new Angular version 21 is giving to us. So without further ado, let's just so you can see this is the expense tracker that we have at our disposal. We have created the expense tracker where we have our components being separated and the active forms being added over here. So why we are going to use this effect instead of sticking with that HTTP client plus the JSON server that we have used. So it was the previous solution that we have created was workable for our local platform or local development basically. But as you know that we are building our portfolio and we are deploying our pages on the GitHub. So we can't host that JSON server over there because it's going to run on a different port. So we aren't deploying it on the same repo. So what does happen if we do not have our JSON server? So our values are not going to get retained, and the specific this specific portfolio and this specific application is not going to appeal very much to the visitors. So we have think of solving this without a database, because one thing, like if we need to create a proper production ready application, we need to have a proper storage system and any database over there which being served via the APIs. But as of now, we are in the very early stages of our application. So what we are going to do, we are going to use the local storage to solve all these problems. What does a local storage is? It's basically a key value store, which being built in every browser that can persist the data indefinitely until the user himself clears it. And what effects is? So one thing is the local storage. The second thing is the effect. So as we have learned in the very first video about the signals, so it holds a specific state. Then comes the computed, which was we have created on top of signals. This is more of a derived state. Now comes the effects. Basically, effect is more of a like reaction to the state changes, and it runs side effect. So think of it as just a function which is going to run every time your like the dependency on which this effect is listening to or watching is going to get updated. So so you can see a side effect is anything that reach out or outside the signal world. So what does it mean? If we need to like write to a local storage, logging to a console, or send any analytics, so we can use this side effect to like run in parallel. And once these values being changed, we can automatically save our data within the local storage. So even we can update the DOM directly using this. So you can see over here, like the first one is the computed thing. So within the computed, the signal is the signal, the expenses signal is being used, and computed is created on top of that. It was more of a filtered expense, and React something which does something out of the signal. But you can see within the effect, there is like this expense is being used. So it means this expenses is more of a dependency which effect is looking at and listening to, or you like keeping or watching an eye on. And if this expense is going to get changed, this effect is going to run again. So the key difference is that computed is going to return a value, and this effect, it's not going to return anything, but it does something which we have asked it to do. And how does this effect works? So what does do? Basically, Angular reads signal, which signals are accessed inside this. So as I've just mentioned, like this dot expenses is the signal which have been accessed inside this. So whenever this signal is going to get changed, this function is going to get rerun. So again, the Angular is automatically keeping track of this expenses as a dependency. So every time this signal is going to get changed, whether from a post response or a local update. So what does actually happens? This effect reruns and save that new expenses to the local storage. So the main advantage over here is that we do not have to call this saving on our own manually. It's going to get triggered every time there is any change. The full strategy that we are going to use with this local storage, like when the on the application started, what's going to happen? It's going to get load from the storage first. And if we are not able to load it, then we will try to fetch it from the API. The reason we are keeping the API as a fallback mechanism right now is that later down the road, we are thinking to create a proper like database server and the backend, and using the REST APIs, we are going to pull it from that server. So we are keeping those APIs intact rather than removing it. So what is actually happening? It just checks for the local storage. If found, it is going to like display the data instantly, no network call. And if it's not being found, then it's going to get it from the API. And what is actually happening, as I mentioned earlier, effects is automatically going to get triggered, and it's going to save those changes to the local storage. So with every change, this is happening. And what does it's like providing? Like local storage for GitHub pages we are using, and HTTP when we have a real backend, which I've already mentioned to you. So let's just quickly understand or try to see how this local storage API works. So because we need to use it's along with effect. So what the local storage itself is, basically local storage is a key value store built into every browser. So you can think of it as a key value store where we can place a string. So it always like store strings. So in case if we need to store any objects, so we are going to convert them to a string, and then like we save it. We'll see it in the upcoming slides. What does it happen? Because it's being persisted in the browser, and even you close the browser and come later, so it's already there within the local storage, and from there you can pull the data. So there could be multiple mechanisms. Like one is the session storage. Session storage is only available till the session is there. So unless and until once I close the like tab or the browser, so this session is being expired, and you need to have a new session there. So it's not feasible. The local storage which we are going to use, it stays there. And the third thing is like cookies, which we are not going to use, because cookies are more of a like expiry based, and they need to be sent to the server on every request. So with this being done, so local storage is our right choice at this point of time. And we are going to quickly see what does the methods this local storage offer to us. So basically we need to set an item. As I just mentioned, this is going to be a string based key. So what does it do? Local storage set an item with a name and a value. So you can see the name is again a string and the value is a string over here. I can get the same retrieved and set it inside a variable. So you can see I'm getting it from a local storage.getItem using the key name. Then comes a remove item. So it deletes only one key. If I want to explicitly delete one key, so using this remove item, I can remove that. And one thing, if I need to clear the whole this local storage, I can use local storage.clear, but it will clear all the keys. So the one limitation which I've discussed in the last slide was this string only. What does this local storage do? It only saves strings. So what we need to do, because we are having an array of objects, not a string. So we need to convert it. First, we need to convert the object to like a string, and then we need to save it. So how we are going to do? You can think of it like we do have an expenses array. Inside that expenses array, we do have a single object with ID 1. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to use the JSON.stringify, and inside that we are passing this array of this object, and what it stores, you can see it's going to create a string out of it, and it's going to store it within the this local storage. We will be quickly looking at it once we will be dealing it in the browser. So again, this is the JSON string is for converting, and if we need to retrieve the values back, so we are going to use the JSON.parse. So using these two methods, we can save the object within the local storage and retrieve it from there as well in a form of objects rather than not just a string. So what actually happens when we try to retrieve something and there is nothing there. So what actually happens when we try to get an item and there is no key value available for that, we are going to get a null. So we need to handle this case because null is going to crash certain things. So how we are going to handle this? Once we are going to retrieve an item, we are using it with the JSON parse, but you can see like here we are passing an empty array to the expenses. So if there is nothing, so for the very first, we need to fall back on an empty array. And you can see one more thing which can happen with like JSON parse can throw in case if, like, let's say if the data is corrupt. So what the JSON parse is going to do, it's going to throw an error, and we need to handle that error effectively as well using the try catch. So you can see we are going to create a function. I'll be discussing it when we'll be looking at the actual code in the VS Studio. Sorry, VS Code. So this function, what does it do? It's taking a key and a fallback, and it's using the try catch. And with that, you can see we can use this function along with the type, and we'll be discussing this in detail in the coming slide. So one thing which we can do and see, we will be opening our like browser, and on that we are going to specific storage tab. I'll be going it once we'll be opening the browser. So within that, within the application tab storage, we are going to see the local storage. So using that, even using the dev console, we can directly set it using the dev console tool. So we will be experimenting this as well. So why this effect itself is perfect for local storage? So this is the question we need to ask, because we can do it using any other method as well. So there could be a method like in case if we do not want to use this effect. So let's say when we are adding expense, so and we are trying to update this expenses, we can do have a single line local storage dot set item. After this, again, once we are doing it in the update limit, we can do that, and while deleting we can just use the same line again. But what is going to happen if we miss out in a single place? So this data is going to get lost, or data would be corrupted. In a sense, it might be stale, not corrupted, but it would be stale because we might have updated certain things, and you do not have the same value within the local storage. With this effect, it like catches every possibility, but the reason is that it's taking care of the expenses signal, and it's setting this expenses signal to the expenses key explicitly. So this way, all like local storage is always stay in sync automatically, and this is the actual and the real power within these type of like Angular based framework. So reactive side effects is the main power of Angular, which is helping us this to be done automatically instead of we writing the code for every updated. And one more thing, like we are going to add this effect to the service. So a helper function, as we have just discussed, to load the local storage. So I'll be discussing that, and it's again going to get saved, auto saved by the signals. And let's just quickly open the service, and you can see this is the method which I have quickly shown to you. And you can see this method is going to be outside the class. We are going to add it inside this expense service.ts file, but it's going to be outside the class and before the injectable. So why we are placing it there? Because it's more of a utility function. So what is actually going to happen? Like it has no dependency on Angular or the service itself. So it just take a key and a fallback value is being written if it's not parsed, if not been parsed properly, and if a proper value has been written, so that value is going to get written properly. And then comes the you can see we have used these less than greater than sign in a form of bracket having a T. So this is basically the beauty of using generics. So generic is a concept where you are not providing the type at this point of time, but this type have been inferred based on the way this function is being called. So if it's being called for a array, it's going to return that array, and if it's being called for a object, it's going to get return that object. So you can see, like, if we can use it for expense array as well, and we can use it for the record object as well. So without writing two functions. So we need to do what we need to do. We need to add or update the imports. So we need to add effect to, so in case if we need to use this effect. So what are we going to import? We are going to import this effect inside the code. And one thing, don't worry, I'm trying to keep you guys updated with the knowledge, and you might be feeling that we are not diving in the actual IDE to get a feeder, but the concept is way more important than trying to experiment the code, because the code you can quickly get this code developed by any AI tool within a few minutes. So it's not the code, it's the understanding you build for that code is the main important thing. And that understanding can only come when you have a holistic idea of how this framework it is working, and how these specific key values and how these specific components are interacting with each other. So rest assured, I will be looking at the code as well. And then comes as you can see right now, our signals are getting initialized from two signal. So what does it do? It's loading from the API. So instead, we are going to load it from the local storage. So what we are going to use over here, you can see we are going to use a signal, and inside that we are loading it from the local storage. So again, this API response, and if in case if the local storage was empty. So what we are trying to achieve over here within the constructor, we are trying to set these effects. The reason is that once we have it within the constructor, it will keep tracking this expenses for the rest. And once these expenses are going to get changed, this is going to get triggered. So you can see, like, even the key that we have used is like key T. It's going to avoid any other local storage key if someone have created somewhat similar expenses or limits keys. So this is our updated service.ts file. So let me just quickly update it within the VS Code. So you can see I have updated this code and effect is there. And let's just try to quickly see what changes are there. So I'll be using this over here. You can see one thing over here, effect have been introduced. And then the local storage helper, which I was discussing about, is here. So what we are going to pass in a key and a fallback of type, which type of data it's going to return back to us. So that was one thing. And you can see it's outside this expense service class, even on top of this injectable. Then we can see that what we have done over here, like expenses itself is getting updated using this signal, and same goes for limit, and both are being updated from this load from signal. So once this being done, so even this category, I think it's already there. And you can see the constructor, which I just talked about, the effects we are using that. Let me just scroll this so you can quickly see. So within the constructor, we have the effects, both effects, for one for this expense key and one for this limits key. And one more thing you can see, like if local storage have data, so what is going to happen over here? We are just going to return. So we are not doing any thing over here. So based on this, we are rated that as well. One more, I think we will be discussing it later. This code doesn't need to be uh, discussed as of now because we are not going to see to this. And what else? So, okay. Clear storage function we have added, which is relevant to this. So let's just quickly move further and see what these changes like attributes to. So you can see like effects is inside the constructor. So as we have already discussed this, so it must be called inside a injection context. So either a constructor or a feed initializer. The reason is that constructor is getting called when this class is going to get initialized. So this is the first method which is going to get called automatically. So this is the cleanest space. And then it's going to run for the first time, it's reached this expenses. So what does it do? Angular registered it as a dependency. So every subsequent change to the expense is going to trigger this effect automatically. And what else? So the local storage over here, you can see, which I've quickly discussed with you. So what actually happens on startup, we check if the local storage already have data. So we can skip the API call entirely. So this way, the user sees the data from the local storage and no network call is being initiated. So this is the like local storage first approach and then API if we need to call. So both signals and this have been used. And one more thing, within the add expense, we are like using a more of a optimistic approach. What does it mean? Like we update the signal immediately. So without waiting for the API call. So you can see the signals are getting updated and the API call is awaiting. And if there is a error, so so allows the error silently because the local storage itself already have the data. So it's working as a more of a failover mechanism. So what does it means? Like optimistic updating, what it's doing? Like it's assuming success always, and it's going to update immediately and sync in like background. So it makes the like app feel instant. This is just a like way of doing, but we might be using it in certain ways and we might not be using it, because if we need to make sure that both the API is working fine and also the local storage, so we might not be using. This is just a way. So think of it that we can use it optionally. Then we have a clear storage method, which we have discussed. So it's going to remove these key. So this is again a utility method for testing. And we can even call this from our like browser as well. So we are not going to use this. And one more thing which we are going to do, we are going to deploy, as you already know, that we are deploying it on the GitHub pages. So let's just try doing one more thing. Like if we are working on local, so we might be using the API URL. And if we are having this on the production, so we might be using this production environment. So let's just try creating two environments. And let me just create those and then we can move further. So over here on the source folder, I am creating in environments, and what I'm going to call the first one, new file, environment. I think I've been missing something. And yes. And the second file name is going to be environment.production.ts. So let me quickly see if I use the right words. So I have with me my environment. The local environment is saying the production is false and the API URL is resolving to our JSON server. And the second thing is that production is true and there is no API URL. So local storage is going to get used. So this is the way we are going to effectively use it within our code. With this being done, so let's just try updating our expense service to use this environment. So I'm going to update this using this import from the environment, and this API URL is going to get replaced. So let me just update this service. Even the methods which we are calling needs to be updated. So let me just quickly update that code. Okay, so we have updated the code and you can see the environment import is here and we have changed the API URL as well. Now comes to the methods that we have changed. So add expense, let me just quickly go to that method. So you can see over here, like we have used this .api URL. So if that URL do exist, so then it's going to call, otherwise it's not going to get called. So this is a change which we have done, and same going to be done over here. Only API call in development. So this is going to get called in the development environment only. So with this being done, let's move further. So let's just try building our app. So let me just try npm start and try running it locally to see what we have achieved so far. I'm trying to run it. So it's loading, but you can see as I do not have my API running, so let's just try looking at application. Within that, let me just quickly go to this application and the local storage and over here. So you can see these two limits are there. So there is no expense, but the limit do exist. So let me just try adding an expense. So let me just use my expense form. New expense of 1000 on food. So let me just try saving it, and you can see this expense have been added. Let me try adding one more expense and new expense, another new expense. Let me just call another new expense, and let me just call it 15,000, and it's on shopping. Let me just add the expense. So you can see over here, like this is an array having two objects. So one is for the food and the second one which we just added is for the shopping. For some reason, the main were not loading, but now you can see these shopping things are getting loaded, and even this expenses are getting loaded. Like two expenses which we have just added are getting loaded, and based on those, budgets are also getting updated. So you can see the local storage have been used effectively and effects have been properly used. Because let's say if I add uh, but as we have already seen using this, like as I try to save it, so using the effect, we have saved it within the expenses key. So I'm very hopeful that you are able to follow along with me till here, and we will keep building our application one by one, and then we'll be later summarizing on how we are going to effectively use all the concepts in our app. So if you like the video, feel free to like and subscribe. And if there is some missing piece, so do let me know. And if you want me to add anything else, so feel free to leave a comment. So thanks for watching. Bye.